Dear Thay, dear brothers and sisters, and dear family, the monastics are going to chant the name of Avalokiteshvara, the Bodhisattva of deep listening. And this is not a prayer, it is actually a practice. Avalokiteshvara is a person that has the capacity to listen deeply to their own suffering inside. And from that listen deeply, they are able to understand the roots of their own suffering. And from there, they're able to have healing, compassion, understanding, and transformation for themselves. And at the same time, because they have this healing and transformation and understanding and compassion, they're able to listen to the suffering of other people and to understand and to give rise to compassion. So while the monastics chant, they also try to touch the suffering inside of them. It's not just a vocal. And because inside of every one of us there is suffering, the suffering in each of us reflects the suffering of the world at the same time. Because we are, and we are no different from one another. Many of us do not want to go home. Like we said yesterday, we sort of try to run away and to evade. And we are afraid of being overwhelmed by the pain and the sorrow, the despair and the anger inside of us. So the practice recommended by the Buddha is not to run away from suffering, but to be present for it. But in order to do that, we must come home to ourselves, to be in touch with it and hold it dearly and listen to it so you can understand. So when the monastics chant the name of Avalokiteshvara the first time, they turn inside of them and touch the suffering inside. And when they chant the name again the second time, they start to recognize the suffering of those all around them. And when they chant the third time, they become aware of the suffering in the world. And by chanting with mindfulness like that, they produce together the energy of mindfulness, concentration, and compassion. If we know how to allow that kind of energy to penetrate us, it can be very healing. So we would like to invite you at the same time while we listen to this chant. Again, it's not a prayer, but a practice of listening deeply within and to understand the roots of our suffering, to opening our heart and to coming home to ourselves. And we invite you to practice together with the brothers and sisters. The first time being in touch with your own suffering, holding it, gently caring for it, and being present there. The second time, being aware of the suffering of all of us in the room. And the third time, being aware of the suffering in the world. And from there to generate understanding and compassion. And during this time, if there's anyone here, your loved one, your brother, your sister, your mother, your father, anyone who is, for one reason or another, cannot be here today, you can also channel that same kind of energy to them. You can call their name and say, I hear you and I understand you. But first we can only do that when we come back within ourselves. And so let us listen to 3 sounds of the bell to establish a presence within ourselves, grounded in our own body, and relax. And you can join your palms if you like, Or you can place your hand on your heart to really feel your heart beating there, to hold yourself, to give yourself the hug that you also long for, and to allow the energy of compassion and understanding from the brothers and sisters collectively penetrate into your heart.
Dear respected Thay, dear noble community, dear families, welcome to our holiday retreat at Deer Park Monastery. Today is the 30th of December, and we have just a little bit more than one day before the new year. And many of you have heard the former President Jimmy Carter just passed away. And I was reflecting on him and what I know of his life this morning, and I see that we're all complex human beings, and we all have difficulties, and we may agree or disagree with what is the meaning of a valuable life, of a meaningful life. But when I looked and I saw a little bit of his history, I thought, wow, this is somebody who really tried his best to serve his community, to serve his country. And yeah, I feel some inspiration. I feel that what we're all doing here at Deer Park is going in that direction. But we don't operate on the level of government or the political. But we see that when we build community through our own transformation, our own healing, that kind of community can be very solid, very stable. And it can be a place of refuge for many people, for families, for children, for those who are older. And that is what is going on here at Deer Park. So we're building a true habitat for humanity, which is not just about houses, but it's about how we live our lives, the kind of quality of our character. And Thay has given us a wonderful example in his life. Growing up, he saw something that's not quite right in his country. Many things. And he felt from a very young age a deep determination. He looked for heroes, for a model that he could take refuge in. There's a story when Thay was a child, he and his elder brother and some other friends, they were in the north of Vietnam in a province called Thanh Hoa. His father worked for the emperor, and which was under the colonial government of the French, to help people resettle in areas that were not yet populated. So to clear new land for people to live in. And so he went to the north and he brought Thay and his elder brother and siblings and family with him. And they were sitting one day and they said, "What do you want to be when you grow up?" And one said, a doctor, and one said, a lawyer, or maybe something like that. I can't remember exactly the different things, a scientist. And then one of Thay's older brother said, "I want to be a monk." And then they all reflected and said, "We all want to be monks too." And they all made the determination to become monks. And then we know Thay saw the picture of a Buddha sitting very serenely. At that time there was a journal in Vietnam called the Thay, the flame of insight, is that right? The lamp? The torch, thank you, the torch of insight. I was close. And they were printing in that journal many very revolutionary things about how to practice Buddhism. Not just chanting for funerals and doing ceremonies, but how to actually transform our mind. And that was somehow it gotten buried in Vietnamese Buddhism. And Thay saw the cover of that journal with a Buddha sitting very calmly, very serenely. And he felt resolved to have that kind of calm, that kind of peace. And so Thay's life is combining this aspiration to be a monk and to be calm. Because not all monks are necessarily calm and peaceful. And then later Thay learned through these Buddhist journals that were circulating at that time about a time in Vietnam when there was peace and the country was stable, and the king practiced the Buddhist teachings in the Li and the Chun dynasties. So from about 1000 of the Common Era till the 1300s. And even one king Trần Nhân Tông, who he abdicated his throne to be a monk, to go to the mountain and practice meditation. He had all the power. He was loved by the people. He'd repelled the Mongol Empire from Vietnam. And he feared that the country would become more violent because the army had repelled. And so in order to calm the country in himself, he went to the mountain and he set an example. He set a model for how to be a human being. And so I felt that this morning, reading and reflecting on Jimmy Carter's life. And many people, they feel he failed as a president, but he succeeded as a human being. And I'm not sure he failed as a president. If you succeed as a human being, I think maybe you succeed as a president. And they asked him, why do you think you lived so long? He saw his 100th birthday. He was able to cast a vote for Kamala Harris. He said it's because of Rosalind, my wife. His 3 siblings died, all from pancreatic cancer, much younger than he was. And he was the eldest. And so I reflected on our own community and our choice as monastics and long-term lay friends to stick with community, to really live our lives together and rely on each other. Because we depend on each other. None of this can happen without every one of the monastics. So when you see the monks and nuns standing up here chanting, that is part of Thay's kind of masterwork. Thay created a community where we all get up here and we chant together, and we feel brotherhood and sisterhood, siblinghood, living together. And I'm sure that is for our own health and well-being as well. We're not married, we don't have Rosalind, but sometimes we say we are married to the Sangha. And I know after my parents' divorce growing up, I felt like I don't know that I can ever say till death do us part to any one person. But when I discovered the Sangha, I said, I can say that to the Sangha. I can make that commitment because the Sangha is a jewel. And people, we change. The Sangha also changes, it grows. But I saw a kind of stability in the Sangha, in this community. When I first came as a lay person, I saw they're not thinking about just the next few months. They're not thinking about just the next couple of years. They're not even just thinking about the next few decades. There's something going on here which is looking much deeper. There's an awareness of the course of history that supersedes anything I have, that I can understand. And so I'm very curious. What is going on there? And I haven't even met Thay yet. I haven't heard much of Thay's teaching. But I just looked at the Sangha and what the Sangha was doing. This was at Maple Forest Monastery. Has anyone ever been to Maple Forest Monastery? Okay, all right. It's a little blip. Before Deer Park, there was 2 centers in Vermont, Maple Forest Monastery and Green Mountain Dhamma Center. And so that was the first place I went to practice. And yeah, and I remember writing in my journal. I didn't, like I said, I really didn't know much about Thay, but I tried to live in communities. In my life, after I finished college, I went to Europe and I was teaching English, but I was very deeply holding in my heart, what is community? And what is a real community? There's a kind of like phrase, a question that I held in my heart. One of my teachers at my college, I was studying some education classes, and I had a professor. His name was Randy Testa, and he lived with the Amish. And he asked me that question one day, and at that time I had really taken refuge in my college town because my parents were splitting up, they divorced, and I didn't have a place, like a home to go back to. So I wasn't able to arrive at home. And he asked me that question, and it stuck with me, it gets inside my consciousness. And everywhere I went, I tried to say, what is real community? What does it mean to be in community? And so I look for communities in many experimental communities. I lived in the 90s, I lived in experimental communities in Spain and in France. And we were on the left. We want to bring a revolution. Some weeks we would go out and do a protest every day. We invented protests. We've tried to find reasons to demonstrate. Good reasons, but a lot of us had a lot of anger in our heart, unresolved anger. And we went dumpster diving. We got the food that's thrown away from the old yogurt and cheese, a lot of good cheese. And I was in Paris at that time. Very good cheese in the dumpsters of Paris. And we thought we were living in like the shadow of capitalism. And we wanted to experiment without having money, but just depending on community. But I saw that the anger in my heart, I didn't have a way of looking at my emotions with stability yet. But now I look back and I see my anger kept growing stronger and stronger. And I had like the government, neoliberalism, neoliberalism, all these kind of abstract ideas that fighting against. And one day we had a demonstration. It was very funny. We were all dressed in I was dressed in a dress, we were all dressed up, and we were protesting against the gentrification of a neighborhood in Paris, and then some of the protesters, they started spray painting on the buildings, and so then the police started chasing us, and we were running, and I was in a dress, and because we were all dressed up for some reason, and then we went into the metro, and all of us, we got on, and then it's like, I don't know, 50 people, and then we went somewhere else up into the northern part of Paris, and then we came out, and it took a while for the police to find us because we and I remember there were these young guys, and they were a little bit aggressive, who were part of the protests, and there was an undercover policeman, and one of the policeman grabbed me by the back of my dress, and then, but one of these young guys knocked him down and started kicking him on the ground. And I was so taken aback because we'd done protests, but I'd never seen anything violent. There was never any kind of, the anger manifesting as violence. And it really kind of dazed me. And some were arrested and taken away, and I remember just walking away from that and really reflecting on what I was doing and what kind of energy, what kind of collective energy we were generating. Because whatever our object to change the world, there is anger. It's coming from a place of anger. And I saw that those young men, there's something it's like they cherished the confrontation. They wanted to, there's a kind of ideal of the confrontation with the police. And so I really reflected on that, and I had it provoked in me a deep looking, and again with this question, what is a real community? And so I found the next months I really went in myself, and I was asking that. And I tried living in an organic farming community in Spain, and they also had difficulties. And I learned that it's not easy to live together. Nowadays we can get on the internet and we can find the community of people who think exactly the way we think. We don't have to deal with all the messiness of really living in community with people who disagree with us. People who don't walk the way we like to walk, talk the way we like to talk, have the same views as us. It's perfect. You can just kind of carve out of the internet exactly those people that you want to interact with. And then when we see living like flesh and blood people, we don't want anything to do with them. Because they don't have the very high, perfect views that we have, we and our friends online. I'm being a little bit like facetious, but it's just to show you actually live in community? Oh, people sometimes they make weird noises during sitting meditation. or when they use the bathroom, or they don't they leave the seat up, or they cook the food that we don't like to eat, or leave a pile of dishes in the sink. This is the reality of community. And in our community, we learn to really live together and embrace everyone, and know that not everyone's going to have the same way of looking at things. A big trap in our community is to think, oh, but Thay did it like that. Why don't you do it like that? Talk about a difficult standard to live up to. Yeah. So we have to embrace our brothers and sisters, all of them, even if they don't do what Thay said we should do exactly. We learn to have patience and openness. And so this morning, when we read the Discourse on Love, I was reflecting on the power of every one of those lines and how difficult it is to practice it. Someone who wants to attain peace should practice being upright, humble, and capable of using loving speech. Practice being upright. I think when I was younger, I looked at being upright, having a moral, ethical life as something you either you had it or you don't have it. But as I grew older, I see that, and especially when I learned the practice, I saw it as something that we cultivate, that we decide every day to be upright, to really be present for ourselves and our own actions, and accountable. So I'm grateful for this community to help me to be more accountable for my actions. It means my actions of thinking, my actions of speech, my bodily actions, that I take responsibility for them. And I'm very lucky because my sisters and brothers, they're not shy to scream and yell at me when I'm not holding myself accountable for the results of my actions. I mean, maybe not screaming, but they let me know. And that's so precious. In those years when I was looking for community, I went on many paths that didn't bring much fruit. And there was nobody to tell me. I thought I was free, but nobody was there to say, hey, what are you doing? Actually, there's a lot of love when somebody says that. When somebody gets in our face and says, no, that's not okay. In that moment, I realized I had people like that. But then I left college and nobody was there to tell me anymore. And I really felt lonely. Actually, it's the most lonely when there's nobody to tell us, like to get in our face and tell us that, hey, that's not okay. So being in community, if it's a real community, that's number one quality. There are people who are going to tell you, hey, no, that's not okay. You got to reflect on that. You got to take accountability. Be accountable for your actions. And that is the practice of being upright. We learn to begin anew. And tomorrow, I think my sister will go into more detail about how we can begin anew with ourselves, how we can learn how to practice being upright. It doesn't mean we're always upright. There's a difference. It's like, I like the translation Thay did, capable of using loving speech. You should practice being capable of using loving speech. It doesn't mean you always use loving speech. But you know that you're capable of using loving speech. Because some people don't even know they're capable of using loving speech. So having love towards ourselves is first of all recognizing that each one of us is capable of using loving speech. And that we don't always use it. So we recognize that we're not perfect. We can listen to a sound of the bell. Now we have mega markers. Okay. Practice. So, never mind. Practice being upright. It means we wake up and we decide to be accountable, to live an ethical life. Being humble. So in the monastery, we practice to see that we are not a separate self, that we inter-are with the entire community. And sometimes it's easy to say, we inter-are with the entire cosmos, but be a separate self in the community. So interbeing is very real. It has to be applied in every moment of life. So I learned to practice to see that, to practice gratitude, for example, for my sister who's sitting at the bell, this attention, to have gratitude for my brothers and sisters who chant so beautifully, who hear when one of the notes is a little bit flat and then they start to sing a little bit higher. To see that we are operating like one organism. And so humility is not just about like cutting down our ego, but it's actually seeing what's really there, which is that we are none of us operating by ourselves alone. And no matter how many titles or great job position or kind of attainment we might get out in the world, we are still completely embedded within a network of living beings and dependent on all of their support and love and care, just as we are made up of the love and care of our parents, our ancestors, our community, our teachers, our friends. So humility is quite vast. It's recognizing that we're just a part of this beautiful collective body of wisdom and teaching that we receive from our ancestors and that we continuously receive from our community. So that is the practice of being upright, is the practicing what we call interbeing, that we can't be by ourselves alone. Interbeing. And capable of using loving speech. You know, we can talk about our mind as being made up of what we call mind consciousness and store consciousness. And what's in store, you might not see it. What's in the mind, you see it. It's there. When you feel joy, that's joy manifesting in your mind consciousness. Your thoughts, they're manifesting here. But they have the root down here. So we say all the seeds are there. Seeds like anger. Down here there's the seed of loving speech, but we might not use loving speech. We might not be using it in the present moment. So we learn to water these seeds in our store consciousness, like the seed of loving speech. We practice it in a retreat. So if we're here with our family, we might practice loving speech in the beginning a new practice with our teen. So we learn to say kind words to our teenager. Maybe we haven't been able, maybe there's something, some hurt, some pain, some frustration with the way that they're going through the experience of being a teen. And so we carry that hurt. If we feel like they're not grateful, not doing enough around the house, they're not spending too much time on the computer, on their phone, whatever. We hold that frustration and then our speech comes out. It's very ugly, very hard, very harsh. So it doesn't mean we're not capable of using loving speech, but we haven't been able to water the seed of loving speech in our store consciousness. So when we come on the retreat, you have the support of the monks and nuns all around you. We are here like a container, and we're holding the energy so that you can feel calm and peace, so you can go within yourself and practice using loving speech. So today, when we go to Dharma sharing, see if you can do it. So loving speech doesn't mean we just say nice things. It's a kind of speech which is watering the positive seeds in ourselves and in others. When you go deeper in meditation practice, you see that what you say sticks more to you than to anybody else. So when you are hurt and you say hurtful words to another person, it might hurt that person in the moment, but those words stick with you. They become your signature. Karma is your signature. Your actions are your true signature. What goes out into the world, your thinking, your speech, your action. That is the mark which it goes out. It's not like only at the level of human beings. It's like touching the fabric of the cosmos. So when you have a thought, you think, oh, it's quite private. In other traditions, like in Christian traditions, they say, oh, God knows what you're thinking. But that's just a way, I feel, of describing this fundamental change that happens when you have a thought of hatred or anger or jealousy. It has an effect on your body and mind and on the fabric of the cosmos. And if that thought becomes, you obsess over it over and over, it starts to, you can see, you get sick in your body. And other people around you also, they get dragged down by that energy. So even you don't say it, and you feel like you restrain your body from acting on it, but your thinking is causing a real effect. And this is one of the deep insights the Buddha had when he went in himself. At that time, the other ascetics in the Ganges, the plain of the Ganges, who were practicing going into the forest and living off of roots and fruits, they were very focused on bodily action. But the Buddha went within and he saw that the root of all action is our mind. This 2,600 years ago. He had the insight that our intentions are what direct us. We are like pulled along by the wagon of our intentions. And if our intentions are good, they're based in love, care, kindness, then it has a good effect. And if our intentions are based in jealousy or hatred or anger, that is exactly what we experience. Painful, suffering. Not complicated. So being capable of using loving speech is very concrete. We start with our loving thoughts. So changing our thinking. And we also have bodily action. And when we have loving thoughts and loving speech and loving bodily action, then we're like, the sutra, it says we're like a refreshing pond. And someone who is very hot and thirsty, when they come along, they see that lake. It's so cool and refreshing, and then right away they take off their clothes and they bathe in the lake, and they drink the pure water of the lake. So we become someone like that who can be a source of refuge for others. You can listen to the sound of the bell. So many of us, the monastics, I feel drawn to Thay's teaching in this community because we saw that Thay had a lot of anger at the situation of first the French colonial government occupying his country, and then the American-backed forces and ideology, communist ideology that tore apart families, and his whole country of Vietnam. And so those of us, like myself, who had a lot of anger towards the situation, we feel thrust into this world that has got so many problems. And we want to blame somebody. We want to blame the generations before us. We want to blame the government. We want to blame the military. We want to blame the corporations. And there is some truth in that. And we just water those seeds of anger. And we become like a ball of anger. And that's what I felt like when I discovered the practice. That so much hatred and anger. And I realized there was so much unhealed anger from the breakup of my family, from my parents' divorce, and I hadn't really taken care of that. And that, at its root, was also coloring my view of the world. And ultimately, it's not my parents' fault, but it's how I'm taking care of my mind. I took responsibility for my own mind. I said, I cannot blame other people anymore. If I can sit and bring my attention to my body, to my breathing, to my feelings, just as they are, I saw there's a change that happens. I start to notice what is the root, seeds. So we have seeds like loving speech, but we also have seeds like anger and hatred. And the more we have thoughts and speech and bodily action that are not kind, then that seed of anger comes up and becomes a kind of weed. We have a plant in the valley here called dodder. It's orange, and it's a parasite. It gets inside of the laurel sumac and other plants, and it sits there in a dormant at this time of year. But when the spring rains come, it starts to burst out. It's kind of like the movie Alien or something. It like bursts out of the side of it. If you look carefully at the bark of the branches, it's like rips open the side of and uses the nutrients of the laurel sumac or the buckwheat. And then it just grows all over, all on top of the other plants. And when you see it in the valley, you see like a massive orange, kind of like mutant orange growing all over and smothering, keeping the shade out from. It doesn't have chlorophyll, so it cannot generate light, energy from light. So it depends, it sucks the energy from the other plants. And if it's very successful, then it will like smother everything. So sometimes our jealousy and our anger is like that. We have some kindness, some goodness, some love that we've inherited from our ancestors, but this energy is like sucking. It's sucking the energy from our own consciousness, and sometimes we become codependent, and it sucks the energy from others around us. And it becomes a very dangerous situation. It's like the dodder covering over, not allowing those near us to enjoy the sunlight, to enjoy their own freedom and happiness. And we have to be honest. Coming on retreat, we're honest with ourselves. And we see when that's happening. And if our loved ones are very brave, they can let us know and ask for our support. Because they cannot transform us. How many of us have gotten in disastrous relationships thinking we can transform that person? Okay, some people are raising their hands. Some experience there. Yeah. Yeah, we think, oh, I will. He's got some difficulties, but it's okay. We'll work on it together. You have to do it yourself. You can't do it for someone else. What you can do is create the conditions. So one of my brothers was sharing yesterday, we were talking about Nikolai here. He started a humanure system. Who's used the humanure system here? Yay, okay. So we have lots of good compost. And it's been going on for, I think, 2 years now, something like that. At the beginning, he was so gung-ho about humanure. I had a bit of a reaction. I thought, oh gosh, it's going to force me to like poop in a bucket. And you know, and I believe in it. I love it. It's great. You know, I want to have a closed cycle, not like flushing your poop down into a septic tank and all these things. But when somebody wants to force it on me, I react. And I think that's our human nature. So I think Thay Byung yesterday was sharing, like, Nikolai learned to just step back. He just set up the conditions very well, and then he just makes it available. And then he made one on the brother's side. He made one little outhouse, which has like a 5-star view. It has a window, and you can look out on the valley. You're sitting there and smiling, and relax, and you get this beautiful view of the valley. You can see all the people driving into the parking lot down below. But no, it's very lovely. It's very so. He creates good conditions, so it's pleasant to use the humanure. And now I like it. So the practice is like that. Has anyone tried to force somebody to come on a retreat? Yeah, it's kind of difficult, huh? It doesn't work. So somehow you see the way Deer Park and Plum Village is set up, it's very intelligent. We just create the conditions, but we don't force anyone to come here. We don't accept people who we don't have a program, and then you run in with the law, and then you have to do time at Deer Park as probation. We don't have anything like that. There's one sutra. For some reason I cannot find it, but somebody can find it. I remember reading years ago. There was one where Ananda, he really wanted to help this very unpleasant lady. She's almost like living at the entrance to a town. And so he tries to get the Buddha to teach that woman the Dhamma. Because every time the monks came in on alms round, the woman would just yell all kinds of expletives and call them all kinds of horrible things. The monks, the bald-pated, parasites or whatever. And so, but the Buddha said, no, don't ask me, Ananda, to teach the Dhamma to that woman. She's not capable of receiving it. But Ananda kept persisting, and he asked the Buddha 3 times. And if you asked 3 times, and the Buddha said, okay, you asked me 3 times, okay. And he went and he stood in front of that woman, but then as soon as he stood in front of her, the woman turned the other way and gave her back to the Buddha. And then he goes around the other side, and she turns around the other way. Anyway, I don't know if it's in the sutra, but I heard that story, and I thought that is very true. When we want to learn the Dhamma, we have to have our heart be open. Even as the Buddha teaching us, if our heart is not open and willing to receive, then we will just reject it like everything else. So learning how to have an open heart, to have humility, that is part of love. And that is a condition for peace. So I appreciate that Nikolai was practiced to bring allow us to experience the joy of using the humanure system to poop in a bucket and not forcing. And that is the spirit of Deer Park. We want you to come here and just play. Just play in the embrace of the Sangha. And slowly you get to like it. And so doing the practices is very easy. You can listen to the sound of the bell. They will know how to live simply and happily with senses calmed, without being covetous and carried away by the emotions of the majority. So it's almost the diametric opposite of social media. Live simply and happily with senses calm, without being covetous and carried away by the emotions of the majority. So you know yourself. You have a uncomplicated life. I know I do a lot of communications work in our community, and so I have to be very careful. And the brothers, we have one office, and so we practice together. So I know my brothers are there, and that keeps me grounded. So I'm simple, but dealing with complexity. So actually, if you keep your heart simple, you can deal with a lot of complexity. But you don't get embroiled in it, you don't get entangled in the complexity. You just keep simple. You just offer love. Our teacher, he emphasized the bodhisattva that not many people teach about. So many people, they know about Avalokiteshvara. We heard the chant this morning, the bodhisattva of compassion, that's able to listen deeply to the cries of human beings, living beings. There's Manjushri with his sword of wisdom, cut through delusion. All of our attachments to our knowledge especially, he cuts through them to get a deeper understanding. And Samantabhadra is the bodhisattva of great action. When we feel paralyzed and helpless, we take refuge in Samantabhadra. This great being of great kind action, engaged practice. And there's a Kshitigarbha, the bodhisattva of great vows, great aspiration, who goes into the hell realms. He's solid enough in his practice that he can go into the most difficult places and help people, living beings, to breathe, to have calm, to have peace. These are the bodhisattvas that are like, I don't know that they're as famous as the Marvel heroes in the Marvel movies, but they're like superheroes, very, very calm. But there's one bodhisattva not many people know about. His name is Sada Paribhuta. Sada is always, and Paribhuta is praising, always praising bodhisattva. And this bodhisattva, he really annoys a lot of other bodhisattvas and people. Because everyone, he's very persistent. He goes around and everyone he sees, he joins his palms. And he bows and he says, a lotus for you, a Buddha to be. Over and over again. And even they disparage him. Sometimes we call him never disparaging Bodhisattva. But the meaning is always praising Bodhisattva, so never disparaging. So no matter how much people yell and scream at him and get annoyed, kind of shoo him away, he just, a lotus for you, a Buddha to be. He sees the Buddha nature in every person. And I feel like that practice takes a lot of patience. And we're going to need this bodhisattva a lot in the coming years. We need to go very deeply and be able to touch the Buddha nature in every person when it doesn't seem obvious at all. It's very easy to see an obvious Buddha. He's walking mindfully, always using loving speech, teaching the Dharma everywhere he goes. That kind of Buddha is very easy to see. But to see the Buddha in someone who's hateful towards immigrants, who's always disparaging others, it's difficult. So that is a practice. How do you look and see the Buddha in someone who uses unlovely speech? How do you develop peace? So that's something we can practice. It's very real. This is not a test anymore. I had that insight 2 months ago. I said, this is not practice anymore. I was laying in bed. Like, this is not a test anymore. This is real. This is real life. And these practices can help us they help me on a daily basis to practice being upright, humble, capable of using loving speech, to water the good seeds in my consciousness so they can come up more and more often. Actually, if you have the seed of joy and happiness coming up more often, it helps to take care of your anger. You don't have to struggle inside to say like, oh, I have anger. Why can't I get rid of my anger? Don't treat your anger like that. That's violent, actually. Your anger is there for a purpose. You can learn to befriend your anger. That is also having humility. Your anger is a teacher. Your despair is a teacher. Don't treat it like your enemy. Learn to see that it's crying out for a reason. There's something in what we've been consuming. So when the sutra says, when our senses are calm, it means being aware of what we consume through our eyes, our ears, our nose, our tongue, our body, and mind. What we consume is what we become. So if you want to become hatred and jealousy, then you consume the kind of things on the internet that water that seed of jealousy and hatred. But if you want to be more joyful, be around people who are joyful. Change your life. Choose who you are with. And be together with them physically, in community, real community, where you share resources, you share your time, your presence. You share a common path, a path of practice, an intentional community. It doesn't have to be Deer Park. You can create your own right where you are. You can look and see. You might, when you look, you see the elements of your community are already there. And you can play the role of a gardener, growing a community. You can see that friend. You practice to be sada paribhuta. You see, a Buddha to be. How can I water the seeds of the Buddha in that person so they can become part of this beautiful community, this beloved community? There's that person. They have the quality of kindness. I'm going to water the seed of kindness. I'm not going to blame or just pay attention to their anger or who they voted for in the last election. But I'm going to pay attention to their kindness, their compassion. And slowly you grow a network that becomes community. And you can start with your neighbor or somebody in the apartment next to you. Start close to home, because we need to be like not just in these virtual communities, we need to be in actual communities. Learn how to be a good neighbor again. There's studies that show if you say hello or start have conversation with your like at least 5 neighbors per week, you're happier. So do it for your own happiness. Don't do it for their benefit. Do it for your own benefit. It's this kind of selfish action. Say hello, smile. Don't just see your perceptions about that person, but open your heart and be brave. So being courageous doesn't mean like going out onto the field of battle necessarily, or going to a demonstration. But just being able to say hi to your neighbor, that takes courage. Especially when they've said maybe hurtful things in the past, or they complained about your leaf blower. I don't know. You know, you feel some hurt, so you can water the seed of bravery, of courage, of non-fear. You know, in Indian traditions, they always do the opposite. So they don't talk so much about courage, but non-fear. The absence of fear is the presence of courage. Let them not do anything that will be disapproved of by the wise ones. Who are the wise ones? You have to look in your life. Who are the wise ones? And so in everything you think and you do, let them be a part of that. Let them be on the board of trustees. They're consultants giving you input. It's a kind of, Thay used to say, it's a sickness of the 20th century. Individualism. We think our actions have nothing to do with anyone else's actions, and we are free to do whatever we want. But I think we've learned that's not true freedom. So you let others be part of your board of trustees, your internal board of trustees. See what you're going to do with your life. You allow them in. You unlock the door, which had locked them out, and you allow them. And they might not always be so wise, but together you grow wisdom as a community. None of us alone, the monks and nuns, is so wise. But together we learned how to cultivate wisdom by looking deeply and using that we call the eye of the Sangha, which can look more deeply than just any individual eye. So if you don't see wise ones in your life, you can make it with your practice and by watering the good seeds in others. And this is what they contemplate. So this is the cultivation of good thinking, which becomes loving speech. May everyone be happy and safe, and may their hearts be filled with joy. So it's transforming the urge to punish or blame. So instead, when you have that feeling, you want to punish somebody, you cast them down to some realm of hell in your mind for what they've done. This is what you use as a remedy. It's a medicine. May they be happy and safe, and may their hearts be filled with joy. May all beings live in security and peace. You don't wish them to be hurt. You don't wish them to be agitated or to live in fear. beings who are frail or strong, tall or short, big or small, visible or invisible, near or far away, already born or yet to be born, may all of them dwell in perfect tranquility. So in your mind, you don't have a battlefield that's just eliminating those people and just seeing these ones as good. All of them, big or small, tall or short. You have to include all. And not only human beings, all beings. May they live in tranquility. How can the praying mantises of Deer Park live in tranquility? How can the coyotes live in tranquility? Now they howl when they hear the bell. Maybe they're living more in tranquility. They see that human beings are very pleasant when they hear the sound of the bell, and they practice. Let no one do harm to anyone. Let no one put the life of anyone in danger. Let no one, out of anger or ill will, wish anyone any harm. And you start with yourself. So you have to allow yourself to see where you want to do harm to others, when your actions are causing harm. And you practice restraint. You don't say that thing. That's a way, part of cultivating the good seeds is also not doing, not saying. It's much easier to not say something than to heal a broken relationship. And I speak from experience. It's a lot more work to deal with the repercussions of speaking out of anger than it is to just not say that thing. Even you have the thought, you have the anger, but and then later on when you're more calm and peaceful, you can find skillful words to express your unhappiness. But in that moment, you see, I don't have enough stability. And you can remove yourself. So the fourth mindfulness training, we have that practice. We can remove ourselves from the situation so we don't speak out in anger. Just as a mother loves and protects her only child at the risk of her own life, let us cultivate our love to offer to all beings in the entire cosmos. Let our boundless love pervade the whole universe above, below, and across. Our love will know no obstacles. Our heart will be absolutely free from hatred and enmity. Whether standing or walking, sitting or lying, as long as we are awake, we should maintain this mindfulness of love in our own heart. This is the noblest way of living. Our love will know no obstacles. It means even someone who has done so much harm, someone we think is a complete monster, devoid of any humanity, they can receive this love. Our love also goes to them. And if we all practice that in the collective consciousness, we become like a gathering of light. Like when you have one candle, you have a little bit of light. But when you have many candles, the light of each one interpenetrates. And so Thay taught us that the collective consciousness is like that. As an individual, we are like one candle. But when we come together at a practice center, our light interpenetrates. And so the energy we feel together when we walk, the walking meditation, coming up the hill. I was up in Solidity Hamlet and I saw it, and you feel this incredible peace moving up the mountain. That is the interpenetration of light, of the love of each one of us, creating a collective. It's very beautiful. Free from wrong views, greed, and sensual desires, living in beauty and realizing perfect understanding, Those who practice boundless love will certainly transcend birth and death. It's not easy. The Discourse on Love is not very long, and it touches our hearts, but it's not easy to put this into practice. Free from wrong views. Most of our views are wrong views. Greed and sensual desires. Living in beauty and realizing perfect understanding. So when we come to the retreat, that's what we're doing. We're living in beauty. And if we know how to maintain our practice, we can bring that beauty back with us. Those who practice boundless love will certainly transcend birth and death. It means we're no longer caught in this body as just a separate self. But we see that what we generate with our practice goes beyond any one person, even the one giving the Dharma Talk. That this is a collective experience that we are part of, and we are all contributing to it. And if we know how to touch that energy, we can also receive that energy from the collective. And so a lot of what I do on a daily basis is just receive the incredible collective energy of the Sangha that's around me. And when I need some energy to transform a difficult emotion, I know all I need to do is open my heart and allow it to come in from the Sangha. So I encourage you all in the next 5 days, as we go into the new year together, to open your heart to receive the love of the Sangha. That's all you have to do. And the mindful breathing, the mindful walking, those are all just techniques that help us to become free from our habitual way of just operating based on the automatic thinking, habitual patterns. When we're able to do it, then we can open our heart, and then the love of the community comes in, and then we are no longer alone. And we don't have to worry, because we have a path, we have a community. So I wish you a lot of success on your path of practice during this week, as we look into what it means to begin a new year. There will be difficulties in 2025. But if we have a community, then we can overcome. And we can end this coming year, with more love, more understanding, more joy. So thank you for listening. We'll finish with 3 sounds of the bell.